Today we pack up our luggage and say goodbye to Paris. We're heading for the Loire Valley and the city of Tours. We take a train to the Orly airport, where we pick up our car. We reserved a small VW Polo, but the only thing they had was a large Peugeot 508, a lot larger car than I wanted for driving around some of the small towns of France. On our way, we stop at the large Chateau de Chambord, with its odd collection of spires and chimneys. Once you enter the chateau, you're greeted by this unusual double helix staircase, rumored to be designed by Leonardo da Vinci. It spirals around this center hollow shaft and culminates in this beautiful greenhouse of windows. The interior is only sparsely furnished, with many of the rooms being undecorated. The chateau was built by King Francis I, and over 28 years was never completely finished. During a brief break in the heavy rain, we were able to wander outside to the terraces and ramparts, taking some close-up pictures of the unique towers and enjoying the views. Well, it's getting late, so we head to our bed and breakfast in Voray, just outside of Tours. It's a wonderfully updated B&B in a 280-year-old building. The caretaker recommended a restaurant just down the road. It looked pretty good, but our food challenges were still with us. The menu was handwritten on a chalkboard, and we didn't have a lot of time to try and decipher it. I ended up ordering andouillette, thinking it was just a sausage. Well, it was, but it was just filled with more intestines, and it had a horrible rotting smell to it. Marianne ordered salmonette, thinking it was salmon, but it was sort of a slimy, eely fish. With that, we called it a night. The next morning we were in for a real treat, a wonderful family-style breakfast, with fresh squeezed orange juice, hard-boiled eggs, and homemade jam. Well, the rain hasn't let up as we drive to the Chateau de Chenonceau. The chateau was built in the 16th century, on the piers of an old fortified mill. Over the years, it has gone through many expansions, starting with a bridge over the River Cher, then enclosing that to make an expansive gallery. The chateau is also known as the Ladies' Chateau, since it was home to many of the wives and mistresses of the kings of France. These gardens that flank the entrance have basically remained unchanged since they were created. This one by King Henry II's wife, Catherine de Medici, and this one by his lifelong mistress, Diane Pontier. The story is, King Henry married Catherine de Medici, one of the ruling families of Florence, when he was only 14 years old. But after only a year, he became romantically involved with Diane, a 35-year-old widow who he eventually gifted the chateau to. After his death, Catherine forced Diane to exchange it for another chateau, making this one her own. This is the chapel, whose windows only date back to 1954. The originals were destroyed when the chapel was bombed during World War II. It was also important during the war as a means of escape from the Nazi-occupied zone on one side of the river and the free zone on the other. The furnishings in the chateau are remarkable, since it feels like you're actually walking through a home rather than a museum. This painting of the Three Graces was rumored to be a depiction of the de Nesle sisters. who all at one time were official mistresses of Louis XV. One thing we were impressed with, but really don't see in the pictures, are the beautiful fresh flower arrangements that are in almost every room. Located within the piers of the bridge are the various kitchens, the first being the butchery, where you can still see the knives and butcher blocks for processing game. The next pier is the pantry and bakery, with its large fireplace and bread oven. Below this section was a platform, where supplies could be loaded directly from the boats traveling along the river.
It's exactly like it was, except the flower arrangements and the electricity. It's exactly as it was in the 16th century. This fireplace was used by the servants for the servants. The other one was more used for the novels.
Heading up toward the second floor, we were able to go out to the terrace. Seeing that the weather is clearing, we were able to get some nice pictures of the gardens. Heading back inside, we passed through the various bedrooms, including Catherine de Medici's, with its tapestries full of animals symbolizing proverbs and fables. This is the main gallery spanning the river. Above the main gallery is the Medici Gallery, presented more as a museum of fine art. The rain has finally let up, giving us a chance to wander through the wonderful gardens. In one of the outbuildings is a display that shows how the chateau during World War I was used as a hospital. This is a hedge labyrinth made entirely of yews. Also on the estate is what's called the 16th century farm, which includes stables, vegetable gardens, and flower gardens. In the stables is now what's called the carriage gallery, displaying both noble and rural horse-drawn vehicles. All the flowers on display in the chateau are grown here on the estates, and they have 2 full-time florists just to keep them pretty. Well, it's time to move on. We're heading toward Tours for an afternoon in the city. After spending close to an hour trying to find a place to park, we're finally taking in the sights. One of the first places we stop by is St. Gatien Cathedral. Just down the street from the cathedral, in the courtyard of the Museum of Art, is an old cedar of Lebanon tree, known for their great age and size. Also in the courtyard was this wonderful little garden. Being about 3 o'clock, we started to get hungry, and with it being outside the official lunch hours, we stopped in at our old standby, a kebab stand. It seems like there's a church on every street. This is Saint-Julien-le-Pauvre. The name translates as St. Julian the Poor, because of his great work to help the poor people of the town. This building here is the Opera House of Tours. It was built on the foundations of an old church in 1867. Passing through the main shopping district, we come across this large pedestrian walkway, where we take the opportunity to do some window shopping. One of the places we stop in is a game shop, where we take a look at the French edition of some of our favorite games. And of course, we couldn't pass up a chocolate store. At the end of the walkway is Place Jean Jaurès, where we sat down and rested our feet a while we enjoyed the lovely fountains. Across the street from the plaza is this wonderful ornate building, the Hotel de Ville. The architect for this hotel is Victor Larloux, a native of Tours. He was also the architect for the Gare d'Orsay in Paris, now the Musée d'Orsay. Finally arriving in Old Town, we come across Place Plumereau. It's part of the medieval quarter, where we sit down and enjoy some refreshments. These half-timber wood beam houses were the grand mansions once owned by the 15th century merchants of the area, and are now upscale apartments. Soon the restaurants started opening up, and we started looking for a place for dinner. As we were walking around, someone approached us and asked if we were looking for a place to eat. He introduced himself as Fabien, one of the owners of the restaurant La Maison. The descriptions of the food sounded wonderful, so we took him up on his offer. As a suggested drink, Marianne had Greek Moscato infused with basil, followed by a local deep-fried fish with a cream lime sauce and pureed sweet potatoes. I had smoked pork with eggplant, along with beans and rice. For dessert we had a tart, with chocolate ganache and chocolate mousse, and assorted drink made from lychee fruit, white chocolate, and ginger sorbet. Being our best meal so far, we decided to make it our official anniversary dinner. With our stomachs full, we head on back to the car, passing the Hotel de Ville at night. The next morning we say goodbye to our hosts, Anne and Bertrand, as we head towards central France and the cities of Beaune and Dijon.